All right, I will say good morning. A lot to do today. Today's daf is Samech 68. A lot to do today. We are picking up at the Gemara Samech Zayin Amud Beis 67b. So if you remember again, we saw in the Mishnah an interesting, I don't know if we call it a machlokes, but a difference of, we'll call it difference of opinion. Meaning what? So remember again, the Mishnah said that once the Omer is offered, so Chadash, the new crop, meaning any crop that grew between last Pesach and this current Pesach, becomes permitted. So the Mishnah then records a reality. What was the reality? That as soon as they offered the Omer, if you walked into the marketplace of Yerushalayim, so you would find that the marketplace was already adorned with new crop. With specifically again, the Mishnah says, Malei Kemach Kali. You would find already again roasted flour. So then the Mishnah records that Rabbi Yehuda, Shalober Tzor Chachamim, so the Chachamim didn't like this, and Rabbi Yehuda was okay with it. Right? So Chachamim were not okay with it. The truth is, I take it back. Really, Rabbi Meir says the Chachamim weren't okay with it. Rabbi Yehuda says the Chachamim were okay with it. So it's a machlokes in the Chachamim, were they okay in it or not? So the Gemara says, so I don't understand. Rabbi Yehuda, how can you say that the rabbis were okay with this? After all, again, isn't this playing with fire? In other words, we'll say, obviously, for there to be roasted flour, the moment that the Omer was offered, by definition means what? That they were already harvesting and working with Chadash grain already before the Omer was offered. So is there not a general concern that if they're working with harvesting and preparing Omer grain, Chadash grain before the Karban Omer, then what? Then halacha l'maisa they come to eat it. So how could Rabbi Yehuda be okay with that? To which the Gemara says, or minu, I'll raise the kasha. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, bodkin ar arba'asar, or ba'arba'asar shachris, or b'shas sabir. This is actually amazing. Rabbi Yehuda is also about b'dikas chametz. Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha is you can do b'dikas chametz on the night of Erev Pesach, and Erev Pesach in the morning, up until the Shas Beer, up until it's the time to go in and burn the chametz. But Rabbi saying Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, Rashi says, Ava mikan ve'elech lo, afilu lo badak bizmana degazrina mishum dilma asi lamechal kishem otzi bePesach. So Rabbi Yehuda holds if you did not check for chametz at the time, by the time of beer, the halacha is you no longer do b'dikas chametz. Why not? What are we concerned about? Because we'll say at that point then we're concerned that if you end up finding it, you may come to eat it. So therefore, again, Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha l'maisa, if you didn't check it up until the zman beer, you no longer check it again. You no longer check for it again. The Chum say no, lo badak. The Chum say, we'll say that even if you fail to check for chametz, even on Erev Pesach by the Shas Beer, you do b'dikas chametz even on Pesach itself. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that you may come to what? That you may come to eat forbidden substances if you are actively involved in them. And the Chachamim say, we're not concerned for that. So we'll say, if Rabbi Yehuda holds that I'm not allowed to check for chametz on Pesach itself, lest I come to consume the chametz itself, then Rabbi Yehuda certainly shouldn't allow me to go ahead and harvest and work with chadash grain before the bringing of the Omer, lest I go ahead and come to consume that grain. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rabba shiny chadash. Chadash is different. Why? Top of Sameches. Mitoch shelo hutrolo. Ella al yedei kituf zacharu. Both sides, the halacha is that if you go ahead and you want to harvest chadash grain prior to the bringing of the Omer, you have to do so with a shinui. Both say shinui means, in other words, with kituf. Both say kituf means you can pluck it. You are not allowed to harvest chadash grain with a sickle. Rather, you have to go ahead and essentially harvest it by hand. So because you have to harvest it with a shinoi, a person's going to realize that what? This grain is different, and I have to be careful not to eat it. Amrli Abaye says, that's fine. So that's fine in terms of there's a shinoi with harvesting it. But china v'harkada ma'ika l'meimar. Rabbi say, let's say I'm not the guy harvesting. I'm just the guy preparing it. So again, when it comes to grinding or sifting the wheat, it seems to be that it's grinded or sifted like any other wheat. If that's the case, then isn't there a concern that what? That I may come to go and inadvertently eat it prior to the offering of the Omer? So the Gemara says, halokasha, that's not a problem. Rabbi say there's a shinoi. When you grind up chadash wheat prior to the bringing of the Omer, you have to grind it up in a hand mill. as opposed to in a larger mill. Harkada, similarly by sifting al gabi nafla, use the back of the sieve or not the regular side of the sieve. So also, the Gemara is answering essentially that when you go ahead and you work with chadash produce prior to the beginning of the Omer, you work with it with the shinui at every single stage. There's a shinui with how you harvest it. There's a shinui with how you sift it. There's a shinui with how you grind it. There's a shinui with how you sift it. Because there's a shinui at every single stage, therefore what? We are not concerned that you will come to inadvertently consume it. So the Gemara says, beis hashalchin d'shari ketzira. What about Rabosai in a beis hashalchin? Rabosai beis hashalchin, Rashi says, is a field that is watered with irrigation. So the idea over here is the grain because it doesn't have rainfall. There's a concern that what? Look at Rashi just a moment. So because the beis hashalchin ultimately again doesn't have a regular water supply, if you don't harvest that wheat at a certain time, you will lose the crop. So again, when it comes to a beis hashalchin, so Chazal allowed for the harvesting of the wheat, even in a normal fashion, prior to the bringing of the Omer, because if we don't allow it, it's going to result in a significant loss. So beis hashalchin the shayik tzira disnan kotzun beis hashalchin shebe'amakim avalo godshin. So both say you could harvest the beis hashalchin that's in the valleys, but you can't pile the wheat. So my ikala. So what is it to say? So you told me that we're okay with allowing you to go ahead and work with chadash produce even prior to the bringing of the Omer. We're not concerned you're going to come to eat it. Why? Because you're using a shinui. So what about in the beis hashalchin where I'm not using a shinui? What is there to say in that case? I'll tell you why. Chadash badil minei chametz lo badil minei. So boss is actually very interesting. Sabai says it's very simple. When it comes to chadash, we assume that people distance themselves from the consumption of chadash until when? Until the bringing of the Omer. I will say for a very simple reason. Chadash has been off limits this entire year. People know you can't eat chadash. So because of that, people separate themselves from chadash, and we're not concerned even if they work with the crop prior to the bringing of the Omer, they're not going to eat it before the Omer. We'll say masha'inkin chametz. Chametz is permitted 51 weeks out of the year, right? There's only 1 week that it's not permitted, and there's a real concern. There's a real concern that what? That halacha l'maisa, even on Pesach itself, you may come to consume it. That's why Rabbi Huda holds that halacha l'maisa, if you did not do bedika by the shas beer, then what? You don't do bedika again. We don't want you looking for the chametz, because we're actually concerned that what? That if you find it, you may come to go ahead and what? To consume it. So Amar Rava said, Rabbi Huda kasha. Rabbanan lo kasha. So we'll say Rava says, you're only focusing on the inherent contradiction between the shitos of Rabbi Huda in Chadesh and Chametz. What about the Rabbanan? See, Rabbosai, the Rabbanan apparently are okay with you searching for chametz on Pesach and are not concerned that if you find some, you're going to eat it. Yet what? Are concerned that if we allow you to work with chadash produce before the bringing of the Omer, you may come to eat it. So how do you reconcile that contradiction? Ela Amar Rava, Rabbi Huda lo kasha kiddushanin. So Rava says, Rabbi Huda is not contradicting himself, as we just explained. So Yibbo says, Shitas Rabbi Huda is, when it comes to Chadash, in Shiba Dilamine, people are not going to eat Chadash. Chadash has been usher the entire year. They know they have to wait until the bringing of the Omer. And even if they work with the produce, we're not concerned that may come to inadvertently eat it. Chametz, which is mutter over the overwhelming majority of the year, we are concerned that if you tell you to search for Chametz on Pesach, you will come to eat the Chametz. What about the Rabbanon? The Rabbanon lo kasha. Hu atzmo machzor lo v'sarfo mechal achol minei. See, Rabbi say the Rabbanon say, come on, we're telling you to search for chametz on Pesach. Why, Rabbi say? Why? Because you failed to do so before Pesach. What's the whole point of bedikas chametz? What's the whole point? The whole point is search and destroy. Right? The whole point is find it and destroy it. We're not concerned that someone in the course of bedikas chametz is going to come and eat the chametz. It's totally counterintuitive. The whole reason you're searching is in order to destroy it. Therefore, Chazal said we're not concerned that you're going to come to eat it. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, which is actually the way we pass halacha l'maisa, if you fail to do bedikas chametz before Pesach, you would do bedikas chametz on Pesach itself. Rav Ashi Amar, Rabbi Yehuda lo kasha. So the Ravashi says, the truth is Rabbi Yehuda is not contradicting himself. Why not? Kemach kali tanan. Because they'll say, what did the Mishnah say? What did they put out ultimately again in the, what did they put out in the marketplaces of Yerushalayim? Kemach kali. Look at Rashi. Kemach kali. De'in ru'uyin la'achila kin kemach shalanu. So we'll say, it's putting out roasted flour. It wasn't fit for consumption. Or we'll say, what they were putting out is a flour that could be used, that could be made fit for consumption, but the actual item that was put out was not actively fit for consumption. Because of that, we're not concerned that a person will come to eat it prior to the offering of the Karban Omer. So the Gemara says, V'had Ravashi berusahi. So we'll say, and the Gemara says, by the way, Ravashi's statement is not really true. Berusa literally, or berusa literally means it's on the outside, it's on the periphery, which is another way of saying you're wrong. So the Gemara says, Teinach. So the Gemara says, Teinach mikali ve'elach ad kali ma'ika le'meimar. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. Apparently, before the flour was roasted, it was fit for consumption. It's only once it's roasted that it becomes unfit for consumption. So, okay, I understand that flour in its roasted state cannot be consumed as is. Therefore, there's no concern that someone's going to eat it prior to the offering of the Karban Omer. What about before? Right? Ad kali, right? Tenach mikali, ve'elach, ad kali ma'ika le'meimar, ve'chitema hachanami ayidei kituf. So ultimately, again, maybe you'll say, well, we go back to what we said before, because this entire flour is being employed or being produced with all these various shinuyim, so there's no concern that ultimately, again, a person will come to inadvertently partake of it. So Beis HaShalchan, the Shari Ketzira Ma'ika L'Meimar. What will you do in the case of outside the Beis HaShalchan, where these shinuyim are not necessarily put in place? Ella had Rav Ashi Berusi. Rather, you have to say that which Rav Ashi said is in fact incorrect. Shabbosai, what comes out ultimately, again, it appears that the machlokes is as follows. Rabbi Yehuda ultimately, again, was okay with the putting out of the grain, the roasted grain, in the marketplaces immediately after the Omer, even though what? Even though halacha l'maaseh meant that people were working with chadash produce, even before the beginning of the Omer, and the logic seems to be because people know to stay away from chadash. Because, again, for an entire year, Chadash was Aser, we're not concerned that people are going to come to consume it prior to the offering of the Omer. Masha'en Kein Chametz, Rabbi Yehuda says that if you did not do the Badika prior to Pesach, do not do the Badika on Pesach itself, because we're actually concerned that Allah Chalamaisi, if you find something, you'll come to eat it. Why? Because the overall majority of the year, Chametz is mutter. The Rabbanon, on the other hand, I will say, hold differently. The Rabbanon seem to say that halacha l'maisa, we are concerned that you will come to eat chadash prior to the offering of the Omer because you're actively preparing the wheat for consumption. Masha'en came Pesach, we're okay with you searching for it ultimately on Pesach itself. Why? Because since your entire intent of searching for it is halacha l'maisa to go ahead and find it, or I should say to go ahead and search. Since your entire purpose of searching for it is to destroy it, we're not concerned that you're going to come to consume it. So we'll say, at least by Pesach, by the way, we pass like the Chachamim, and indeed the halach is if you failed to do the Badika prior to Pesach, the halach is you do the Badika on Pesach itself. No, not on Yom Tov itself, but rather, again, on Chalamayit itself. You would do that. That's how you pass it. In terms of what was done, so the Mishnah, I just want to point out, the Mishnah is not telling us a machlokes about what to do, what not to do. The Mishnah is telling us a metzias, a reality. We'll say, what was the reality? What was the reality? That when they offered up the Omer, the marketplace was already filled with chadash produce. So obviously, the Mishnah is telling me what happened. Were the rabbis happy with what happened? Not happy with what happened? So there is a machlokes in the reaction of the rabbis to the actual practice. Rabbi Meir is saying they were not okay with it. Rabbi Yehuda is saying they were okay with it. But instead of machlokes in halacha, the metzias was such that in fact this was happening. Says the Mishnah, Mishakarav Omer Huter Chadash Miyad. So we'll say when the Omer was offered, Chadash becomes permitted immediately. Harachokim mutar mechatzos hayom ulalon. We'll say the rechokim, which Rashi says she'inam yodim im adayin karav. So we'll say cities that were further away. We'll define the scope of this. But the cities which were further away from Yerushalayim, therefore, again, we'll say they did not know exactly when the Omer was offered or not. Mutar mechatzos hayom ulahalon. they were permitted to eat chadash from midday and on. See, I will say, again, in Yerushalayim, they knew exactly when the Omer was offered, because word got out. Outside Yerushalayim, I don't know when, so you could assume by chatzos, by midday, the Omer was already offered. So the Gemara says, Mishchar Beis HaMikdash, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Sheyehe Yom Hanef Kulo Aser. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that the entire second day of Yom Tov, what we call Yom Hanef, which is the day of the waving of the Karban HaOmer, Rashi says Yom Tes Zayin, this is the second day of Yom Tov, the 16th of Nisan, the entire day should be Aser in Chadash. In other words, that you can't eat Chadash really until nightfall of the 17th of Nisan. So nightfall, the third night of Pesach. I'm Rabbi Yehuda. Aser. Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't say why do I need to take on Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? Midda Oraisa, in the absence of the Karban HaOmer, the entire second day of Pesach becomes Aser in Chadash. Where do I know? That's Shnei Emar Ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh. I will say again, we'll understand exactly what the drasha means, Ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh, but Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying that the Karban is Aser Ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh until literally again, the fullness of this day has passed. I'm supposed to say, jumping back for just a moment. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, why is it that the faraway cities were permitted to eat Chadash already as of midday? What's the reason for that? Because I will say again, they knew that Beis Din, which means right Beis Din, the Beis HaMikdash, right, ultimately again were not lazy. That they got the Karban HaOmer done as soon in the morning as possible. The truth is, very often it was done first thing in the morning, but we know for sure by Chatzos it was done. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Bizman Beis HaMikdash Kayom Omer Matir. So we'll say, here we go. So Rav and Shmuel both agree. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, so it was the Omer which was the Matir. It was the Omer which permitted, ultimately again, Chadash consumption. Bizman She'en Beis HaMikdash Kayom, when the Beis HaMikdash was not standing, then what? So the Gemara says, Heyer Mizrach Matir. Then as soon as the sun comes up on the second day of Yom Tiv, then what? Chadash is permitted. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. So Rav and Shmuel say like this: when there is a Beis HaMikdash standing, it's the Karban Omer which permits Chadash. When the Beis HaMikdash is not standing, unfortunately, it is Heirayom, sunrise. Sunrise of the 16th of Nisan, sunrise of the second day of Pesach, ultimately permits Chadash. My timer, where do they get this from? Trei Kroiksiv, there are two psukim. Ksiv ad Yom Aviachem. So Rabbi say one pasuk says that Chadash is Aser ad Yom Aviachem until you bring it. Bring what? Bring the Karban Omer. So one pasuk tells me that it is the bringing of the Karban Omer that is Matir Chadash. Uksiv ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh. Rabbi say, but the pasuk also says literally again ad Etzem. Rabbi say, now here's what's interesting. Rashi says ad Etzem Hayom ad Mare Hayom. V'kasaver ad velo ad bichlal. So the way Rav and Shmuel understanding ad etzem hayom hazeh is ad etzem means until the beginning of this day, until this day is seen. Ad mara hayom, right? Until the beginning of the day. So I'll say, how do you reconcile these two ideas? Is chadash mutter when you bring the Karban Omer, or is chadash mutter ad etzem hayom hazeh as soon as the day begins? To which the Gemara says, "Not contradiction. Ha keitzad kan bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim." When the Beis Hamikdash stands, so it's the Karban Omer that is matir chadash. Kan bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim, and when chas v'shalom there is no Beis Hamikdash, then what? Then as soon as the sun comes up on the 16th of Nisan, chadash is mutter. So we'll say that's Rav and Shmuel. Rabbi Yochanan say no. Afilu bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim heyer mizrach matir. So Rabbi Yochanan and Lakish disagree. And they say even when the Beis HaMikdash stands, and therefore there is a Karban Omer, Chadash is mutter as soon as the sun comes up. As soon as Heir Mizrach, so ultimately again Chadash is mutter. Chadash is mutter. V'ayvak sev ad haviachem. But one second, what do you do with the pasuk that says, that seems to indicate that Chadash is only mutter when I will say, only once you bring the Karban, to which the Gemara answers, Lemitzvah. So we'll say Lemitzvah means what? That the Torah is telling me that that's the ideal. The ideal is that you shouldn't eat chadash until you bring the Karban Omer. But halacha lemaisa, Rashi says, "Mishani lemitzvah, mitzvah lahamtin ad sheyakrev haomer, b'avalav hachi lo avar." It's a mitzvah. It's a good thing to wait to eat chadash until you bring the Omer. But meikar hadin, chadash becomes mutter as soon as the sun comes up. So we'll say, now the Gemara raises a bunch of kashas on Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So we'll say, so fundamental machlokes, Rav and Shmuel versus Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rav and Shmuel, when there's a Beis HaMikdash, Omer allows for Chadash consumption. When there is no Omer, then as soon as the sun comes up, in Achinami, daybreak allows for Chadash consumption. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, daybreak always allows for Omer consumption. What's the role of the carbon? Mitzvah, ideally when the Beis HaMikdash stands, you should wait to bring the carbon until you eat Chadash. So we'll say the Gemara raises a bunch of kashas. Mishakara v'omer hutar Chadash miyad. The Mishnah said, once you bring the Omer, Chadash is permitted immediately, which seems to indicate to us what? That halacha l'maisa, it is only the bringing of the Omer which permits Chadash. The mitzvah, the Mishnah is just telling you lechatchila. Lechatchila is ready for the Omer. Ha'omer hayamatir b'medina u'shtei alechem b'mikdash. We're going to see in the next Mishnah. It says the Omer is what permitted ultimately Chadash consumption, the Medina outside of Yerushalayim, or I should say outside of the Beis HaMikdash, and Shtei Alechem in the Mikdash. So again, it sounds like the Omer is the Matir, the Mitzvah, that's just Lechatchila, Amud Beis. Mishachara Beis HaMikdash, Hiskan B'Yochanan Ben Zakkai, Yom HaNeif Kula Aser. The Mishnah said when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai said that the entire day of the Omer, the entire Yom HaNeif, the entire 16th of Nisan should be Aser. So my timer. So we'll say, so now let's take a step back. So what's the reason for this? What's the reason for this? So we'll say, what's the reason for this? This is actually amazing. We saw this in Sukkah as well. What's the reason for this? My timer, Mehira Yibana Beis HaMikdash. Mehira Yibana Beis HaMikdash. Halavai, the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt speedily in our days. And what's going to happen, Rabbi Osai? Vayomru, Ishtakid Nilo Achanu Beheir Mizrach. Suppose here's what Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is concerned about. He's concerned about year one. So we'll say year one when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt. So what's going to happen? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, what we've just said before, Me'ikar Adin, it sounds like, that when there is no Beis HaMikdash, Chadash becomes permitted immediately upon daybreak. Okay, now it's year one. Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt. Once Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, really what's the Ikar Halacha? When does Chadash become permitted? This is in Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's now. When does Chadash become permitted? Once you bring the carbon. Once you bring the carbon. What's going to be the problem? There are those who are going to see year one of the Beis HaMikdash, year one of Bayis Shlishi, who are also alive when? Obviously many years beforehand. And what are they going to say to themselves? Ishtakid, last year, when did we eat Chadash? When did we eat Chadash? Immediately upon daybreak. This year, we could also eat Chadash immediately upon daybreak. V'yomru ishtakid milach anu beher mizrach. Hashtanami nechol, this year, when even though there's a Beis HaMikdash, let's also eat Chadash at daybreak. V'lo yadi d'ishtakid lo havele omer. Her mizrach yitir, and they will forget, they won't realize that last year we ate Chadash at daybreak. Why? Because there was no carbon omer. V'hashta di'ika omer matir. But now that there's a carbon omer, the omer is matir. Now both say, now remember, the Gemara is quoting this as a kasha against Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. And if you want to just say that really me'ikar adin, you could always eat Chadash at daybreak, and it's only a mitzvah, it's only the chatchila that you should wait until you bring the carbon omer. Mishum mitzvah leikom v'ligzar, because of a lachatchila that you should wait for the carbon omer, you should go ahead and make the entire day. As Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's entire shita is predicated on the confusion that will occur or potentially occur in year one. People will say, we ate Chadash last year at daybreak, now this year, with this basically, let's also eat Chadash at daybreak. Meanwhile, they should really wait for the carbon. But if you're saying Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, they're really waiting for the carbon omer, it's only lechatchila. It's only meaning it's a mitzvah, it's okay, it's lechatchila. But me'ikar adin, you could already go ahead and eat Chadash at daybreak, even when there is a Beis HaMikdash. Why would Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai make such a dramatic decree to aser the entire 16th of Nisan in Chadash, lest you go ahead and eat Chadash without the offering of the carbon omer? To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda Amra. No. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai actually holds of the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. What did he say? So remember again, Rashi says over here, Avram Nachman Rabbi Yochanan b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda Amra, Torah min HaTorah hu asra la'achar churban v'lo mishum gzer shem yivan. We'll say. So remember again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is of the opinion, is holding Rabbi Yehuda. What does Rabbi Yehuda hold? So the Gemara says the Amar min HaTorah aser. We'll say Shitas Rabbi Yehuda is Rabbi Yehuda holds that in the absence of the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore in the absence of the Karban HaOmer, the entire day 16th, the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach, is totally Asr in Chadash. Totally Asr in Chadash. So the Shene Emar, Ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh, Ad Itzumo Shel Yom, V'kasaver Ad Ve'ad Bichlal. So we'll see, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that Ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh does not mean until daybreak, as Rabbi Shmuel said, but rather, what does it mean? It means Ad Itzumo Shel Yom until the entirety of the day, Ad Ve'ad Bichlal, the entire day is Asr. So we'll say, so now the Gemara suggests Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that in the absence of a Beis HaMikdash, in the absence of the Karban HaOmer, the entire 16th of Nisan is Asar B'Chadash. So the Gemara says, really? Umi Savarle Kavase, is that true? V'ha Miflag Poligale. It actually sounds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is arguing on Rabbi Yehuda. We'll say, why? What did we see in the Mishnah? Tisnan, Mishecharav Beis Hamikdash Chiskan Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Shehi Yomanev Kulo Aser. So we'll say, ultimately again, what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted a takana that the Yom Hanef, the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach, should be totally Aser in Chadash. Rabbi Yehuda argues. Rabbi Yehuda says, "I'm Rabbi Yehuda, v'halo min haTorah hu Aser." Rabbi Yehuda's shita will say is what? That made the orais of the second day of Pesach is already Aser in Chadash. Dichsiv ad etzem hayom hazeh. So we'll say, so how can you say that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is aligned? So we'll say, first of all, what does it sound like from the Mishnah? What it sounds like from the Mishnah is that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is making a takana. Takana by definition means what? A dirabanan. Rabbi Yehuda is saying, I don't need your dirabanan. It is already aser midoraisa. So how can you align the two? To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda hu katai. So we'll say it's Rabbi Yehuda is making a mistake in the Mishnah. Who's savar? We'll say first wide line. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai midrabanan kamar. Velohi midoraisa kamar. So we'll say Rabbi Yehuda thought that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was instituting or legislating a new rabbinic enactment. But it's not true. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai actually agrees that in the absence of the Beis Hamikdash midoraisa, the entire day, the 16th of Nisan, the second day Pesach is Asr and Chadash. But how can you say that? Vaha hiskin katani. But Rabbi that's not what the Mishnah says. Rabbi the Mishnah says explicitly that hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We'll say hiskin means what? Hiskin means midrabanan. He's instituting a new rabbinic law. My hiskin. Rabbi say, what does it mean? Hiskin, darash vehiskin. What it means, Rabbi say, is that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai delved into the psukim. And as a result of his understanding of the psukim, hiskin, he instituted a law. But he didn't institute a new law, I will say. What he did is he instituted the biblical law. And the biblical law is just as Rabbi Yehuda said, namely that what? That halacha l'maisa midoraisa, the second day Pesach, 16th of Nisan, is Asr b'Chadash. So we'll say this is a very, very, very novel understanding of the Lashon of Darash v'Hiskin. He darshan the psukim and therefore established the halacha. But Hiskin does not mean the Dirabanan. Hiskin means he established the law as it is clearly and as it is understood midoraisa. Rapapa of Hunri Yeshua. So we'll say, so fine. So first of all, understand this is a novel interpretation of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It's certainly not the conventionally held understanding of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. But I will say, what we come out with over here, I'm just pointing out, is really a fundamental machlokes on the timeline of the Isser of Chadash. Ultimately, you have Rav and Shmuel who are holding that really Chadash, when there's a Beis HaMikdash, Chadash becomes permitted with the Omer. If there's not a Beis HaMikdash, then Heyer Mizrach, that as soon as daybreak comes. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, who are saying no, Chadash always becomes permitted as of daybreak. It's just when there is a Beis HaMikdash l'chatchila, you should wait until the Karban HaOmer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Yehuda, who are both agreeing that what? That in the absence of a Beis HaMikdash, the entire second day of Yom Tiv, 16th of Nisan, is going to be Asar b'Chadash. Since the only machlokes ultimately is, Rabbi Yehuda certainly holds its Doraisa. Does Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai hold its Doraisa as well? Pashat Pshat seems to be no. He holds it is a Dirabanan. But apparently, according to this interpretation now, he's holding it as a Doraisa as well. The Gemara now tells us what people did. Rapapa of Hunri Yeshua, Achli Chadash Ba'arta D'Shisar Nagi Shivsar. Both say Rapapa of Hunri Yeshua would eat Chadash when? In the evening of the 16th, prior to the 17th. So the night, so the evening of the second day of Yom Tiv, leading into the third day of Yom Tiv. Why? What was the logic for that? Kasavar chodesh b'chutz la'aretz dirabanan. So we'll say they held that chodesh chutz la'aretz. Now we're going to get into this. We're going to get into this. Hashem. They held that chodesh and chutz la'aretz is only aser midirabanan, and furthermore, again u'lesveika lo chashin. So we'll say, see this now. You came by just in time. This is where it mamish gets very exciting. So watch this, I will say. So now here is the issue we have. How does this all translate into chutz la'aretz, where you have a sveika diyoma? Remember again, inherent in chutz la'aretz Yom Tov observance is this date ambiguity. So now I will say, everyone is agreeing that something's happening with Chadash on the second day of Yom Tov. What's our problem in chutz la'aretz? Our problem in chutz la'aretz is which day is the second day of Yom Tov. There are two possibilities. Either the second day is the second day or the third day is the second day. So how does that translate ultimately again into Chadash observance in chutz la'aretz? So there are really two kashas. Kasha number one is there Chadash in chutz la'aretz? That's number one, which we have not dealt with. And number two, if there is Chadash in chutz la'aretz, ultimately again, what do you do with that vis-a-vis Sveika Diyoma? So here the Gemara is telling us, and this is amazing. Rav Papa and Rav Rabbi Yeshua would eat Chadash. They were in Chutz La'aretz, they were in Bavel. So when did they eat Chadash? They ate Chadash on the evening of the second day of Yom Tiv, right? Which for us is Yom Tiv Sheni, right? They ate it on the evening of the second day, going into the third day. What does that tell us? That tells us, number one, there is Chadash in Chutz La'aretz. That's number one. But ulesveika lo chayshina. But I will say we don't have to get into sveika diyoma. We don't have to essentially say, well, we shouldn't eat chadash and chutz la'aretz. Ultimately, again, on the second day of Yom Tov and on the third day, with the possibility that the third day is the second day. So that says Rav Papa Rav Yeshua, we do not go ahead and do. So look at Rashi just a moment. Chasav chadash chutz la'aretz dirabanan ulesveika. Bless you. So we'll say now. I'm sorry. Now the logic of this is because they're holding there is Chadash and Chutz La'aretz, but what? It's midirabanan. So we'll say essentially what they're saying is you can't pile dirabanans on dirabanans. Yom Tov Sheni is a dirabanan, Chadash and Chutz La'aretz is a dirabanan. You can't tell me now that I can't eat Chadash until after the third day of Yom Tov, because then I will say that's one dirabanan on another dirabanan. That's Chadash dirabanan on top of Sveika Diyoma dirabanan. That's what we're not going to do. But so they would wait to eat Chadash ultimately until the end of the second day of Yom Tiv. The Gemara says, Rabbanan did Ravashi, the rabbis in the Yeshiva Ravashi, Achlu b'tzafra de shivsar. They ate Chadash only on the morning of the 17th. So we'll say what they would do is they wouldn't eat Chadash the entire day of the 16th up until the morning of the 17th. So the Gemara says, so we'll say, what's the logic there? Because the morning of the 17th, that's Her Pnei Mizrach. What's the logic? So the Gemara says, Kasavra Chadash b'chutz la'aretz doraisa. So we'll say, ultimately, again, they held that Chadash and chutz la'aretz is doraisa. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai midrabanan ka'amar. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, when he said that the Yom Hanef is Asar, that was only midrabanan. V'chi takin l'Yom Hanef l'sveika lo takin. And ultimately, again, the takana was only for the actual Yom Hanef, but it was not halacha l'maisa, but it was not for the extra day. Amar Ravina, Amra li'eim, my mother told me, Avuch lo achal chadash ala ba'arta de shivsar nehigi tamnia. Timneser, excuse me, I was listening to this. Ravina said, my mother told me that my father never ate chadash. Ravina is also chutz la'aretz. My father never ate chadash ela ba'arta de shivsar until the evening of the 17th. I also remember again, what's the evening of the 17th? That's third day Pesach. Until the evening of the 17th, Nagi Timnisar, going into the 18th, the fourth night of Pesach, the Savarla Rabbi Yehuda, the Chayish L'Sveika. Because ultimately, again, he held like Rabbi Yehuda, and also Rashi says, Savarla Rabbi Yehuda, Damar Kol Yom Hanef Asra Min HaTorah, the Chadash Asra B'chutz La'aretz D'Oraisa, Hilcha Chayish L'Sveika. Listen to this. So Ravina's father, essentially, he took all the shitas. So we'll say, what are all the shitas? Number one, Chadash and Chutz La'aretz is Asra D'Oraisa. That's number one. Number two, in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash, right? Yom Hanef is Kula Asar. Rabbi Yehuda, like we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, that the entire day, the entire second day of Yom Tov, ultimately again is going to be Asar in Chadash. And number three, that we observe, because Chadash is Midarais and Chutz La'aretz, and Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, you have to be Choshesh for Sveika Diyoma in Chutz La'aretz. Therefore, again, the second day may be the second day, the third day may be the second day, and therefore Halacha L'maaseh didn't eat Chadash until nightfall, really, of the fourth night of Pesach, in order to go ahead and keep in mind all of these different shitos. But we're going to see Halacha L'maaseh what we do with Chadash, or we'll discuss Chadash and Chutz La'aretz, and therefore the ramifications of this in just a little bit. Let's go back to Ha'omer Hitir b'Medina. So we'll say the halacha is that once you brought the korban Ha'omer, Hitir b'Medina, we'll say Hitir b'Medina means that Halacha L'maaseh Chadash becomes permitted. Chadash, you could eat new crop once you go ahead and you bring the korban Ha'omer. U'shtei alecha hamikdash. Now we'll say the shtei alecha, remember again, are the two loaves that are brought in the Beis Hamikdash, that are brought on Shavuos. So apparently what the Mishnah is teaching me is as follows. It's actually quite amazing. You could see, so private consumption, we'll call it mundane consumption of new crop, you could do immediately after bringing the korban Ha'omer. In the Beis Hamikdash, you could not bring sacrificial items from the new crop until after the Shtei HaLechem. So the Gemara says, we'll see why that is. So the Gemara says, Menachos, bikurim minchas behema kodem la'omer. But we'll say, so you can't go ahead and bring Menachos, bikurim, minchas behema from the new crop until after the Omer. Imhevi pasul. If you brought from the new crop before the Omer, it's pasul. Kodem l'shtei alechem, and ideally, you should not be bringing in the Beis Hamikdash from the new crop prior to the offering of the Shtei HaLechem, but in heavy kasher. But if you did, the korban will still be kasher. Yosef Rabbi Tarfon v'kakashile. So Rabbi Tarfon was sitting and he was pondering this, and he came up with the following question: Ma bein kodim la'omer la'kodim Shtei HaLechem? Why is it, Rabbi said, that for sacrificial items like the korban mincha, why is it that you have to? That ideally you shouldn't bring the mincha from the new crop until after the Shtei HaLechem? Why isn't waiting till after the korban ha'omer enough? So the Gemara says, Amar lefan of Yehuda ben Nechemia. Listen to this. So Yehuda ben Nechemia said, Lo, im amrit kodim lo omer shekin lo hodar michlal lo etzel hedyot. See, I will say before the omer. Ultimately, again, there's not even a comparison by hedyot. There's nothing. So I will say by meaning before the omer, even by mundane consumption, it'll be aser. Tomar kodem l'shtei halechem shehodar michlal lo etzel hedyot. Ultimately, again, when it comes to Shtei HaLechem, Rabbi say, what Rabbi Tarfon is trying to understand is as follows: that ultimately, again, the halacha is by sacrificial items. If you end up bringing from Chadash before the offering of the Omer, and you use that crop for sacrificial purposes, the korban will be pasul. Masha'en kain, if you use from the new crop before Shtei HaLechem, the korban will be mutter, even though that is not desirable. So Rabbi Tarfon is trying to understand why that is. To which Yehuda ben Nechemia says to them, I'll tell you why. Because before the bringing of the Omer, Abosai, there is none of Chadash produce is permitted, not even for mundane use. However, Tobar Kodim Shtei HaLechem, Shuter Michlalo Eitzel Hedyot. Once the korban Omer is brought, even though it's before Shtei HaLechem, you can go ahead and use of this new crop prior to what? You can use of this new crop for mundane consumption, even though it's not ideal for sacrificial use, but there is still a permitted use. Therefore, b'di eved, if you ended up bringing sacrificial items from this new crop after the Omer but before Shtei HaLechem, ultimately it'll be okay. Shasak Rabbi Tarfon. So Rabbi Tarfon his question was turned on its head. So he was answered, Tzava Panash Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemia. So also Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemia apparently was very proud of himself that he was able to show Rabbi Tarfon why he was wrong. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva. So I'll say, so Tzavu Panav is almost like a lashon of gloating. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemia was gloating. Rashi says samach. He rejoiced a bit too much. He gloated a bit too much that he answered up Rabbi Tarfon. So to the point that apparently, if you can infer from the side that Rabbi Tarfon was somewhat embarrassed. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva Yehuda. Savu panecha sheishavta zazakin. You're gloating because you went ahead and you stared the old man. Rabbi Tarfon. Timhani im ta'arich yamim. I'll say this is actually amazing. So ultimately, again, Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Yehuda, I'm sorry, I'll be shocked if you live to an old age. So we'll say, this is an incredible idea. What Rabbi Akiva was saying is, one of the most severe infractions is when a person is mevaza Talmid Chacham. When a person goes in and treats a Talmid Chacham in a degrading manner and compromises their kavod. Ultimately, we'll say, because remember, the kavod of a Talmid Chacham is the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. if you take liberties with the kavod of a Talmud Chacham, you are taking liberties with the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the repercussions for that are quite severe. So Rabbi Kiva says, Rabbi Yehuda, Mamish, you're gloating over the fact that you embarrassed Rabbi Tarfon. I'm scared to know what the ramifications for that are for you are going to be. So Rabbi Yehuda so we'll say this, Rabbi Yehuda says, Osa Perak Prasa Pesachaya. So we'll say this all occurred a couple of weeks before Pesach. Kishalisi Latzeres, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi says, when I came back to Yerushalayim for Shavuos, Sha'alti Achar Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemya Heichanu. I asked for Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemya, Va'amruli Niftar V'halach Lo. And I was told he had passed away. So we'll say, so again, just so you understand, this story occurred a few weeks before Pesach, and already apparently by Shavuos, unfortunately, Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemya had already passed away. Incredibly dramatic story. Amram Nachar bar Yitzchak. L'divri Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemya. We'll say, using Rabbi Yehuda ben Nechemya's logic, Nisachim, or I think it changes to Niske, right? Yeah, Niske Bikurim. So, Niske Bikurim. I'm sorry. So, Niske Bikurim, Shekrivan Kodem La'omer Ksherim. Ultimately, again, if you have Niske Bikurim that were offered up before the Omer, they're kosher. That was now. What does this mean? Rashi is Niske Bikurim Miyayin Shebicher Kodem La'omer Krim Ksherim. So we'll say this is talking about grapes. So if you went ahead and you brought Nisachim, ultimately, again, from grapes from before the Omer, the offering will be kosher. To which the Gemara says, Pshita. Now, that's obviously, we'll say, remember again, Chadash, remember, the carbon Omer only impacts what? Only impacts grain. It has nothing to do with grapes. So obviously, if you're bringing from the new crop prior to what? Prior to the bringing of the Omer, of course it'll be fine. Pshita, Mautema, what would I have thought? Hassam, Maudetema, Hassam Huduhuter Michlalo, Eitzel Hadyot, Aval Hacha de Lohuter Michlalo, Lo. We'll say, I might have thought that it's only ultimately, again, that which has a parallel, that which is permitted, Eitzel Hedyot. But ultimately, again, here, by the case of grapes, there's no parallel case. In other words, we'll say, because it's all permitted. In other words, there's no part of the grapes that's mutter, no part of the grapes that's asr. I might have thought that therefore it should be asr until the Omer is brought. Kamash molan kol shekin hacha delo isser klal. But says therefore the Gemara says all the more so here, where again all the grapes are permitted. Certainly again this will be permitted as well. So let's just begin this. We'll have to continue this tomorrow. We'll say, so here's what's interesting. What we established in the Mishnah is as follows. For general consumption, the halacha is what? New crop becomes permitted when? After the Karban HaOmer. For sacrificial items, Chadash only becomes permitted when? After the Omer and then the Shtei HaLechem. The Gemara asks a very interesting question. What happens? Shtei HaLechem ma'ushi atiru shelo kisidron. I will say, do the Shtei HaLechem permit even if they're offered up out of order? Or as we'll say, let's say you have a case of produce that only saw the Shtei HaLechem but didn't see the Karban HaOmer. Could that produce be used ultimately in sacrificial service? Hey, I will say very quickly, what's the case? Kigon dizar inu beina Omer the Shtei HaLechem, the Chalef alayo Shtei HaLechem, the Omer. So let's listen to this case. I planted wheat, right, in between the Karban HaOmer and the Shtei HaLechem, right? And what happens? You used a lot of Miracle Grow, and Baruch Hashem, it grew. Now, Basai, I harvested before the Shtei HaLechem. So now it'll be there for the offering of the Shtei HaLechem. But what, Rabbi? But what? But ultimately, again, it missed the Omer. So what's the halacha? So kisidron shayon shelo kisidron lo sharyon. Do we say that it's only if the produce has an Omer and then a Shtei HaLechem that it's permitted? O dilma shelo kisidron nami sharyon. Or maybe out of order, it will also be permitted. I will say, now, by the way, there's really two kashas over here. Kasha number one, I will say, is, does it just need Shtei HaLechem? And kasha number two is, if it needs both, is it okay if it has first Shtei HaLechem and then what? Then Karban HaOmer of the next year. So we'll say, Meretz Hashem, we'll continue.